The year is 1258, the 13th of February. Inside the golden halls of the Abbasid Palace, where Caliph al-Mustasim has ruled for 36 long, glittering years, the fountains have gone silent. That is the first sign something is terribly wrong. In Baghdad, this city of wisdom, where water flows like wine and scholars cross 3 continents just to study in the greatest library ever built, fountains do not fall quiet on their own. When they stop, they speak only one message: the end has come. Outside the palace walls, the Mongol army stretches so far across the horizon that the human eye can barely understand it. A sea of riders, a world made of hooves and iron, hundreds of thousands strong. They come from the steppe, a world with no cities, no books, no philosophy, only speed, discipline, and conquest. And in only a matter of days, this tidal wave is about to erase a civilization that has stood for 8 centuries. But the part of this story that will scar the world for generations isn't just the fall of Baghdad. It's what comes after the gates fail, what they do to the city, to the royal family, to the caliph, to his sons, to his daughters, to his wife. The Mongols didn't simply kill, they erased. They made examples so horrifying that Persian chroniclers who saw everything with their own eyes refused to write every detail down. Here at Dark Chronicles, we dig into the cracks where history tried to bury its own screams. Persian manuscripts, Mongol military records, letters from Venetian traders who barely escaped the fire. Every source is a fragment of a shattered mirror, and piece by piece, we bring the truth back into the light. So, return with me to Baghdad, because right now, the gates are splintering, and what happens over the next 7 days will change the Islamic world forever. To understand this catastrophe, we have to understand the man at its center. Al-Mustasim isn't merely a king, he is the caliph, the deputy of God on earth, the successor of the Prophet Muhammad, ruler of an empire that once stretched from Spain to India. He is the 37th caliph of the Abbasid dynasty, a line that has endured for 8 centuries without interruption. But by now, the dynasty is old, and so is its confidence. Al-Mustasim is weak, sheltered, surrounded by courtiers who feed him the only thing he has ever consumed: comfort. He spends his days wrapped in luxury, trusting in titles and traditions, believing that his divine status alone makes him untouchable. And when word arrives that the Mongols are moving toward Baghdad, he reacts the way a man like him always has. He assumes the world will blink first. He believes Allah will protect him. He believes no army, no matter how savage, would dare strike the caliphate itself. He believes Baghdad is too sacred, too important, too inevitable to ever truly fall. He is wrong. The Mongols are led by Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan himself. And by the time they reach Baghdad's outskirts, they are no longer an army, they are a storm. They have crushed more than 40 cities across Persia. They have annihilated armies 10 times their size. They have built mountains of skulls as warnings and turned rivers red as signatures. Now they stand before the richest city on earth. Hulagu sends al-Mustasim a letter, preserved by the Persian historian Ada Malik Juvaini, who traveled with the Mongol army. Its message is brutal, simple, unmistakable. Surrender, and you will be spared. Resist, and your city will become dust. Your palaces will burn. Your family will suffer. Your name will be erased. Al-Mustasim reads the letter and laughs. He gathers his courtiers and says, "These barbarians do not understand who they are speaking to. I am the caliph. God will not abandon me." But perhaps God has other plans. Or perhaps God simply looks away. On January 29th, 1258, the Mongols begin their assault. This is not a normal siege. The Mongols don't rely on ladders or battering rams alone. They bring Chinese engineers, masters of gunpowder, rockets, and siege machines Baghdad has never seen. Day and night, the walls shake under constant bombardment. Stones explode, towers crumble. The sky trembles with smoke. Baghdad's defenders fight bravely, but bravery means nothing when the enemy has turned killing into a science. The city bleeds from 1,000 wounds. On February 5th, the walls finally break. On February 10th, organized resistance collapses. And on February 13th, Hulagu stands inside the throne room of the Abbasid Caliph. The Caliph kneels before him. His golden robes are torn. His turban, symbol of divine authority, lies in the dust like a discarded rag. The man who believed heaven would protect him now looks painfully, helplessly mortal. Al-Mustasim begs for mercy. Hulagu studies him with something almost like curiosity, like a hunter examining an animal that never understood it was prey. Historian Rashid al-Din describes the scene. Hulagu asks the Caliph a single cold question. "Where is your God now?" The Caliph cannot answer. His lips tremble as if forming prayer, but no sound comes. No one knows if he is praying or is simply too broken to speak. Hulagu laughs. Then he says, "You loved gold. Let us see if gold will feed you." What happens next becomes one of the most infamous acts in human history. The Mongols drag the entire treasury of the Caliphate into the throne room. Centuries of tribute and conquest piled into glittering mountains. Gold, silver, jewels, relics. The heartbeat of an empire made visible. They pour it all before Al-Mustasim, and then they force him to eat it. Gold rammed into his mouth, silver coins ground between his teeth. The room shakes with laughter as his teeth crack, as his throat burns, as his stomach rejects the metal being shoved into him. When he tries to refuse, they beat him until he obeys. This continues for hours. He is not allowed to faint. He is not allowed to die. Not yet. By the time they stop, his stomach is ruined and swollen. But the torture has only begun, because Hulagu has ordered the royal family to be brought forward. Al-Mustasim has 3 sons and 4 daughters, and the first to be dragged into the throne room is his eldest daughter, Princess Fatima. She is 27, renowned for her beauty and her brilliance, a scholar of philosophy, a poet read from Cairo to Damascus, a woman raised to believe knowledge could save the world. Now she is forced to her knees in front of her father. Mongol tradition demands special treatment for high-born captives, but special does not mean mercy. It means humiliation. It means cruelty carved into memory. Fatima refuses to let them tear away her robes, so the soldiers rip them from her. Rashid al-Din, writing years later, cannot bring himself to describe everything. He leaves behind only one chilling line, that what happened to her happened before her father's eyes, and when it ended, she was no longer alive. Other accounts are less restrained. A Venetian merchant, Marco Polo the Elder, records what survivors whispered. Fatima was violated by multiple men, one after another, while her father watched. When she died, her body was thrown to the dogs outside the palace. Pause and imagine that. A princess, a scholar, a poet, reduced to a trophy of cruelty by men who saw libraries as fuel, knowledge as weakness, and her father, the most powerful man in the Islamic world, forced to watch, broken, helpless, destroyed. But the night is far from over, because after Fatima, the Mongols bring in the princes, and the Caliph knows exactly what comes next. The 3 sons of Al-Mustasim are led into the throne room next. They are young, too young to understand that the world they knew has already ended. The oldest, Prince Mubarak, is 23. The middle son, Prince Ahmed, is 21. The youngest, Prince Ali, is only 14. Still caught between childhood and adulthood, dragged forward into a chamber that reeks of blood, smoke, and broken stone. Hulagu studies them like a butcher evaluating livestock, measuring, weighing, deciding. He repeats the same question he asked their father. "Where is your God now?" For a moment, none of the boys answer. Their world collapsed so quickly that their minds haven't caught up. Yesterday, they were heirs to the Abbasid Empire. Today, they stand shackled in a throne room that belongs to someone else. Then Prince Mubarak steps forward. Maybe it is courage, maybe pride, maybe the last flicker of a life raised on certainty. He says, "Allah will punish you for this." Hulagu nods slowly, almost as if acknowledging a child who gave a brave but foolish answer. Then he gives a soft command to his soldiers. The Mongols have a rule, documented by Juvayni and other chroniclers, that royal blood must not be spilled openly. Whether it is superstition, respect, or fear of curses, They believe that letting royal blood soak into the earth invites misfortune, so they kill kings and princes without shedding a drop. For the three boys, Hulagu chooses one of their oldest methods, the method of the carpet. The princes are wrapped tightly in heavy rugs, bound so strongly they can't move, can't turn their heads, can barely breathe. Inside the thick wool, their muffled cries rise in panic, echoing like trapped birds. The carpets are then laid flat across the palace floor, and the Mongol horsemen ride over them, again, and again, and again. Rashid al-Din writes that the sound wasn't like breaking bone, it was worse. It was the sound of wood splintering under pressure, thick, ugly, wet cracks as the horses trampled the bodies beneath. The cries become softer, then distorted, then not human at all. And finally, there is silence. The Caliph does not scream. He does not leap forward. He does not beg. Not because he doesn't want to, but because something inside him has already died. He has crossed the threshold where pleading feels meaningless. His sons are gone, and Hulagu is not done. There are still 3 daughters remaining. Princess Zainab is 25. Princess Kadia is 20. Princess Aisha, the youngest, is only 12, still young enough that her bracelet slipped down her wrists, still young enough that she probably believed her father could somehow save her. But for these girls, Hulagu decides bloodless death is too gentle. Mongol practice, recorded in multiple sources, often spares high-born women from execution, but not from fate. They are treated as spoils, living trophies awarded to generals and nobles. Their bodies become symbols of ownership. Their futures become tools of assimilation. Zainab and Kadia are seized first. They are handed to Mongol commanders like valuable gifts, like rewards. They are dragged out of Baghdad, taken far from the gardens and libraries they grew up in. Now they belong to men who know no Arabic, who don't read, who don't understand cities. A Mongol document discovered centuries later in Ulaanbaatar mentions 2 Arab women of noble birth gifted to General Kitbuka after the conquest. After that single note, they vanish from history. No graves, no poems, no children, no names. It's as though they dissolved into the steppe, swallowed by a world that never cared to remember them. But Princess Aisha, the youngest, is not given away. Hulagu keeps her, not as a concubine, but as a symbol, a living reminder to the world that even the Caliph's bloodline can be bent, that no one is untouchable, that the Mongols can reach into the most sacred lineage in the Islamic world and reshape it. He forces Aisha to wear Mongol clothing, forces her to speak Mongolian, forces her to abandon her own name. A Persian chronicler, writing decades later, describes meeting an elderly woman in Tabriz who claimed to be Aisha. She was around 80 by then, her back curved with age, her Arabic broken by a lifetime of foreign syllables. She barely remembered her palace, but she remembered the night her family died, and she remembered Hulagu leaning down to her, whispering words so soft only she could hear. "You are the last. Your line ends with you," she told the chronicler with eyes drained of color and a voice hollowed by grief. He was right. Think about that. A child who should have grown up in gardens and sunlight instead grew old in exile, carrying the ashes of a dynasty inside her chest, living long enough to watch the world move on without her, living long enough for Baghdad to become a memory she could barely trust. Meanwhile, back in the throne room, Al-Mustasim still clings to life. His stomach is destroyed from the gold, his spirit shattered. He has watched his sons crushed to death, his daughters taken, his lineage annihilated in front of him. Yet still, Hulagu does not allow him to die. Not yet. Because the Mongol leader wants a final act, something symbolic, ceremonial, the death of a dynasty sealed in a way the world would not forget. Al-Mustasim is wrapped in a carpet, just like his sons. Tight, suffocating. Darkness pressed in around him. He can barely breathe, but no horses come. Instead, the Mongols build something above him, a wooden platform, and on that platform, they hold a feast. All night long, Hulagu and his generals sit, laugh, drink wine, and eat roasted meat above the Caliph's body. Every shift of weight presses the rug down harder. Every burst of laughter steals a little more air from his lungs. He dies slowly, quietly, invisibly. When the feast finally ends at dawn, the Mongols unroll the carpet. Rashid al-Din describes the caliph's face: purple, swollen, eyes open, no wound, no blood, no mark. Just the suffocation of a man who believed his title made him immortal. 800 years of Abbasid rule, and right there. But the horror hasn't even reached its peak, because with the royal family gone, Baghdad is defenseless. And the Mongols sweep through the city like fire through dry grass. They kill without pause. Men, women, children, scholars, merchants, imams, slaves, anyone they find. Bodies clog the streets so densely that horses struggle to step between them. Chroniclers estimate nearly 1 million people died. Baghdad, the brightest city on earth, became a grave so large it had no edges. Then the Mongols turned to the House of Wisdom, the greatest library the world had ever seen. They burn it. They throw thousands of manuscripts into the Tigris until the river turns black with ink, then red with blood. One scholar, Ibn al-Fuwati, survives only because he hides inside a well. When he emerges 3 days later, he writes, "The city was dead. Corpses covered the streets. The air stank of death. Dogs fed on bodies because no one was left to bury them." Imagine walking through the ruins of your own city and hearing nothing but flies. Imagine the silence. Imagine a civilization losing not just its people, but its memory, its books, its art, its ideas, its entire niche of knowledge turned to smoke and ash. When people speak of the fall of Baghdad, they often talk about numbers. How many died? How many books were burned? How many centuries of civilization collapsed in a single week? But numbers cannot scream. Numbers cannot beg. Numbers cannot tell you what it felt like to be alive 5 minutes before the world disappeared. To understand the end of a civilization, you must stay inside its final moments, because the collapse of Baghdad wasn't a single instant. It was a chain of moments, and each one snapped something that could never be repaired. After the caliph's suffocation beneath Hulagu's banquet platform, the killing does not slow. If anything, it becomes easier. With al-Mustasim dead, the Mongols face no symbolic barrier, no sacred figure to restrain them. The city now belongs to no one, and a city that belongs to no one becomes a city of corpses. The Mongols fan out in disciplined waves. They move district by district, house by house. They are not frenzied. They are not chaotic. They are methodical, like a grim harvest carried out with absolute focus. If someone is found hiding inside a home, they are dragged outside and cut down. If a family tries to flee, they are chased into alleys and slaughtered. If a crowd gathers in a mosque, the Mongols do not hesitate. They kill them where they kneel. Survivors later say the streets ran with blood thick enough that sandals stuck to the ground. The cries echoed through the city for days. By the third night, the air smelled less like smoke and more like meat left too long in the sun. And it wasn't only the ordinary people who died. Baghdad had been the Earth's scholarly heart for centuries. A beacon of astronomy, mathematics, medicine, literature, translation. And the Mongols hunted scholars with the same precision they used on soldiers. To them, a man with a library of ideas was far more dangerous than a man with a sword, because knowledge is power. And the Mongols did not come to rule this city. They came to end it. The House of Wisdom burned for days. Imagine the sight. Halls lined floor to ceiling with manuscripts from Greece, Persia, India, Arabia, centuries of discovery, debate, and imagination. Works copied by hand, illuminated with devotion, a living mind of humanity, now reduced to ash by men who could not read a single word. Thousands of books are thrown into the Tigris. Pages swell in the water, ink dissolves, sentences blur. The river turns dark, first black with ink, then red with the blood of the citizens butchered on its banks. Multiple sources tell a chilling story. A Mongol rider crosses a courtyard, flooded with water, and sees manuscripts floating around his horse's legs like dying birds. He laughs and says, "Look, even the water tries to learn from us." Cruel humor is how conquerors remain human while doing inhuman things. By the 7th day, Baghdad is no longer a city. It is a carcass. Its walls still stand. Its palaces still cast shadows. But everything alive inside it is gone. Markets are smashed. Aqueducts are filled with bodies. Alleys are stacked so high with the dead that survivors must step on faces just to pass. For the first time in the Islamic world's memory, the heart of the Caliphate is silent. No call to prayer, no poetry, no pages turning, no life. Here is the twist history loves to deliver after tragedies this vast. The Mongols don't stay. They don't rebuild Baghdad. They don't even attempt to rule it in the way the Abbasids once did. They came to make a point. And once the point is made, once the world sees what happens to a city that refuses them, they move on. Baghdad becomes an exclamation mark hammered into the map, a warning more powerful than any army. Across the Middle East, rulers hear the whispers of what happened here and begin opening their gates before the Mongols even arrive. Baghdad has already killed 1 million people for them, in fear. But even as the Mongols ride west, even as the smoke fades and the river slowly clears, the world cannot look away from the palace. The gold shoved into a caliph's mouth. A princess violated before her father's eyes. Princes crushed under horses, their bloodless deaths preserving a superstition older than the empire that just fell. Daughters dragged into the steppe, disappearing into a horizon that does not remember them. A child renamed, retrained, reshaped into a trophy of total domination. People whisper these details the way one whispers a curse, not out of fascination, but out of fear, out of the need to understand how far cruelty can go when nothing stands in its way. Because if something this horrific could happen to Baghdad, the jewel of the world, the heart of knowledge, then it could happen anywhere. And that realization reshapes history. The Islamic Golden Age does not vanish in a single blow, but its center of gravity shifts. The scholars who once came to Baghdad now travel to Cairo, Damascus, later Samarkand. The engines of civilization relocate. The Middle East adapts, survives, rebuilds, but it rebuilds with a scar, and you can trace that scar across centuries, in the way cities fortify their walls, in the way rulers stop trusting that tradition alone will save them, in the way libraries begin treating books like fortresses rather than decorations, in the way civilization learns that brilliance is fragile, but scars also live in stories. After Baghdad falls, survivors scatter across deserts and seas. Some end up in Aleppo or Cairo, others in tiny villages where nobody knows of dynasties, only the struggle of tomorrow. And at night, in those places, parents tell their children what they saw. Not all of it, never the worst pieces, but enough. Enough to keep the memory alive. Enough that the Abbasid family does not vanish entirely. Because the Mongols could burn cities, crush bloodlines, and drown wisdom in rivers, but they could not kill remembrance. History is stubborn. Memory is defiant. The Mongol Empire itself fractures. The great Khans turn on each other. Conquerors become rulers. Rulers become ordinary men. Ordinary men become names in dusty chronicles. The unstoppable storm eventually settles into quiet, but Baghdad remains a symbol, a reminder that even the brightest civilizations can fall if they trust too deeply in their own safety. A warning written not in ink, but in blood and silence. Al-Mustasim believed his title made him immortal. He believed God would never allow Baghdad to fall, but faith without vigilance is another form of blindness, and that is the lesson buried in the ruins of that final week. Now, think back to the very beginning, the fountains going silent, that quiet moment before the end. Not an explosion, not a scream, not a sign from the heavens, just stillness. Because that is how disasters come, not always with noise or fire, but with a silence we don't recognize until it's too late. You've walked through one of the darkest chapters in human history. And if this story reminds you how brutal the world can become when power has no limits, then don't let it disappear into the shadows again. Subscribe and help us keep these buried truths alive, because the past does not stay buried on its own. It stays buried when we